بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
The lecture of Riba, or the rip-off, which is used as a vehicle for the impoverishment, exploitation, and eventual enslavement of mankind. The Quran speaks about money. Money in the Quran is a dinar and dirham. Yes, dinar and dirham are in the Quran. Go and search, you'll find it. That's money. And that was money in Britain. That was money here in Britain until the Antichrist took it out and replaced it when the Bank of England was established. Dinar is a gold coin, and Britain always used a gold coin. The British pound was a gold coin. And the money in the Quran is a dirham. And the dirham in the Quran is a silver coin. And money in Britain used to be silver coins. Until the great change take place. Bilal, now put on your thinking hats, because you're going to have to answer me now. Bilal, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, had 2 kilograms of inferior quality dates, and he exchanged them for 1 kilogram of superior quality dates. This one was worth 10 pounds and that was worth 10 pounds. So in value, it was the same. But he exchanged them. And then he went to the Prophet, Allah's blessing be upon him, and offered him some dates. Can you give me some water, please? The Prophet looked at the dates. He said, Bilal, these are high quality dates. Where did you get them? Bilal said, O Messenger of Allah, I had 2 kilograms. I'm using modern weight. In those days they didn't have kilograms. He said, I had 2 kilograms of inferior quality dates, and I exchanged them for this 1 kilogram of superior quality dates. Bilal, said the Prophet, this is the essence of riba, or usury. Thank you. This is the essence of riba, or usury. What you should have done was to take the 2 kilograms of inferior quality dates and sell them, and take that money and buy the 1 kilogram of superior quality dates. That would have been halal or permissible. But a direct exchange of dates for dates, which was an unequal exchange, was haram, prohibited, and riba. Good. But Umar, the companion of the Prophet radiallahu ta'ala, he exchanged 1 camel for 4. And there was nothing haram in that. An unequal exchange of camels, okay. An unequal exchange of dates, not okay. Why? Who will answer me? I have a lot of time tonight.
My guess, dates can be used as currency. That's
Correct. Correct. The answer lies in another hadith, which I must now quote for you. The Prophet said, when a transaction involves an exchange of gold for gold, or silver for silver, or wheat for wheat, or barley for barley, or dates for dates, or salt for salt. It must be, once it is like for like, it must be equal for equal. And it must be hand to hand, meaning cash, not credit. Otherwise, it would be riba or usury. Good. What is there common to all six? I was in a Darul Uloom in Johannesburg. There was 700 students present from about 70 different countries. All the staff, the teaching staff was there, and the principal. And I asked the question, why is it that this one was prohibited, dates for dates, and that one was not, camel for camels? What is there common to all six? Nobody can answer. Nobody can answer. So who will tell me what is common to all six?
Food, intrinsic value, genetics. Food, still intrinsic value.
Don't be afraid to talk.
So they're all foodstuffs.
What do you say?
They're all foodstuffs with value in themselves, yeah?
Intrinsic value.
They're the same species, the same genetics, or shared genetics?
You'll find in this book the prohibition of riba in the Quran and Sunnah. Then you'll find in this small book the importance of the prohibition of riba in Islam. And then you'll find in this book the gold dinar and silver dirham, Islam and the future of the money. You find the answers here. The answer is that in all six, gold, silver, wheat, barley, dates, and salt, all six were used as money in the market in Medina. If there was a shortage of gold and silver coins in the market, then they will use dates as money. They'll use wheat and barley as money. Okay? So now we get a definition of money from the Quran. That money in Islam, money with Jesus when he comes back, is always precious metals, gold and silver. And when gold and silver are in short supply, money is always articles of food consumption, because the government and the police can ban gold and silver, like the United States did it in 1931. President Roosevelt in the United States banned. No one is allowed to keep gold. If you're caught with gold, you can go to jail for 10 years. You had to sell your gold to the government. And the government bought the gold at one price, fixed price, $20 an ounce. And when the government had bought all the gold, the government changed the price from $20 to $33. And then sold the gold back. And the government of the United States ripped off their own people. So, Allah's Messenger said, articles of food consumption. You can't ban rice, you can't ban sugar. The government can't do that. the people who rise up in rebellion against them. So money in Islam is gold and silver, money with intrinsic value. What is the meaning of intrinsic value? Answer: the value of the money is in the money, not in somebody's pocketbook. In the money. So gold and silver, intrinsic value. And when gold and silver are in short supply, then money in Islam are articles of food consumption, like wheat, barley, dates, and salt in Medina, which are in abundant supply in the market and which have a shelf life. Can a camel have shelf life? No. A camel can die. An animal can die. Can mangoes have a shelf? No, mangoes spoil. You keep the mango for too long, you're going to throw it away. So now then, if you are in Indonesia, in the island of Java, and you want to bring back money with intrinsic value, and you have a shortage of gold and silver, what would you use as money?
Coffee seeds.
Rice.
Answer: rice. Obviously you don't know Indonesia. Rice. But it'll be the rice with the paddy on it, the skin on it, that rice. The story of Yusuf alayhi salam and the corn. You keep the corn on the cob, okay? So if you're in Indonesia and you want to bring back real money and you have a shortage of gold and silver, you'll use rice as money, paddy rice. And what about if you're in Cuba and like Fidel Castro, you're not smoking cigars anymore? What will you use as money in Cuba? Sugar is correct. Who said it? Oh, mashallah, very good. Sugar is correct. Cuba is a sugar-producing country, right? So now then, money in Islam is money which always has intrinsic value. The value of the money is in the money. Okay? When I went to Pakistan as a student in 1964, Pakistan was only 17 years old, a teenager. And $1 was worth 1 rupee and 75 paisa. Let me drink some water while you think about that. Did you hear that? $1 was worth 1 rupee and 75 paisas when I was a student. Okay? But then something happened, like what happened in the United States. In 1933, I told you, the US government was issuing US dollars in paper. But the US dollar was redeemable in gold at the rate of 20 US dollars for 1 ounce of gold. 20. And then Roosevelt's government made it haram, illegal to keep gold. You had to sell your gold to the government at $20 an ounce. So the US government bought all the gold in the United States, but those who were savvy sent their gold to Switzerland. You know who did it. And when the US government had bought all the gold at $20 an ounce, the US government then changed the price of gold, meaning the value of the dollar. And from $20 an ounce, I think it became 35. Was it 35? And then they removed the ban. You better buy back your gold quickly before we change again. So all the American people went to buy back their gold. And when they had bought back the gold, Uncle Sam was remained with 41% of the gold in his pocket. That's a rip-off.
Yeah.
When money falls in value, this is what happens. Let me repeat that. When money falls in value, this is what happens. A predatory elite, in this place the government, ends up with all the gold in his pocket. And you're ripped off. So now then, what is the value of the Pakistani rupee now? Pakistani rupee is about 300 rupees to $1. So when money keeps on falling in value, there is a massive transfer of wealth from the innocent, unsuspecting masses to a predatory, blood-sucking elite, domestically and internationally. And so the wealth of the country is being transferred from the masses to an elite who will live so regally that they'll have a khansana, servant. No, not one, 2 or 3 in the kitchen. And you also have a nanny for the babies. You also have 2 or 3 gardeners. You have a driver for your car. And of course you must have 1 or 2 security guards at the gate. Well, you're living like the king now, which is normal practice for the rich. That's how you live when you're rich, because you're paying them the wage of a slave. You're paying them the wage of a slave. That's what Singapore did. The model state of Singapore. The model state of Singapore signed an agreement with Indonesia that in order for the Singaporean woman to live like a queen, she needs a slave in the house. In order for the Singaporean woman to live like a queen, she needs a slave in the house, maybe 1 or 2 slaves in the house. And we want to negotiate with you the wage for the slave, with the government. And the Indonesian government sells their own women. And these women now go to Singapore and work for the wage of a slave. And they work 30, 31 days a month with no holiday. No holiday. And they're Muslims and they have to cook pork. Yes. And they have to do other things besides that I can't mention in a public lecture. No Singaporean woman will work for that wage. None. And so now you see a second vehicle for slavery. The first was the banking system. The second is the monetary system. And when Gaddafi in Libya realized what was happening, then Gaddafi decided, I'm bringing back all of Libya's gold to Libya. And they didn't like that. From the time they saw all of Libya's gold going back to Libya, they realized there's a rat over here, something going on. And then they learned that Gaddafi was secretly negotiating with the rest of Africa to bring a new monetary system for Africa that is built on gold. And then they launched the attack on Libya and they killed him. And they got back all the gold and they got all the oil. And up to today, Libya is in problems. Libya is in fighting civil war because of the monetary system. But before I end the lecture, let us read another hadith. Our Prophet prophesied that the river Euphrates, which is in Iraq, the river Euphrates will uncover a mountain of gold. I assume that you would know that a mountain is quite different from a wheelbarrow. I assume that you will not make the mistake of believing that a wheelbarrow filled with gold is the same thing as a mountain of gold. I assume you have that amount of common sense. Okay. So the river Euphrates will uncover a mountain of gold. And people will fight for that gold. And 99 out of every 100 who fight for that gold will be killed. And each one will say, I am the one who will survive. Meaning this will be a war in which no one is certain of what's going to happen in the war. An uncertain war. No one is certain of victory. But the believers must not touch that gold. If I'm not allowed to touch that gold, then it can't be real gold, because real gold is halal. So now then, what is he talking about? That the river Euphrates will uncover a mountain of gold. Okay? You will be inundated with all kinds of information coming from the internet that they're discovering gold now in Euphrates. That the water is running out from the river and they're discovering particles of gold. But not even a wheelbarrow of gold. And they're saying this is a mountain of gold. That's nonsense. My understanding is that this is not to be understood literally. No. In 1971, sorry, I should go back, 1966, France produced a leader unlike anything that the world of Islam had produced, a man named General Charles de Gaulle. And General Charles de Gaulle had the capacity to understand what all our scholars could not understand. That the monetary system based on paper money, which came from Bretton Woods, and then from the International Monetary Fund, in which the British pound was replaced with the US dollar as a universal currency. And all of mankind now must now print paper as money. And your paper will be judged in value in its relationship with the US dollar. So the US dollar is His Majesty. And Charles de Gaulle didn't like that. The French are proud. Charles de Gaulle recognized that this monetary system was unfair, was advantageous to the United States, which is plain and clear. But the International Monetary Fund said that while your paper money is to be judged in its relationship to the US dollar, the US dollar is judged in its relationship with gold at $35 an ounce. And if you had US dollars, then any country in the world is entitled to redeem their US dollars for gold at $35 an ounce. Are you following me? The International Monetary Fund declared that while all paper money in the world is judged on the basis of its value with the US dollar, the US dollar is judged on the basis of its value with gold, which is at $35 an ounce. And every country in the world had the right, legal right, if they had US dollars, to tell Uncle Sam, give us the gold. We want the gold. Take the dollars at $35 an ounce. So Charles de Gaulle said, I want the gold. He stood up in the French National Assembly in 1966 and denounced the monetary system as bogus and unjust, which no Maulana has done. No Maulana has done, no Darul Uloom has done, none. But that's what Charles de Gaulle did. And Uncle Sam didn't like that. And the Zionists went to work to get him to lose an election, and then he retired. That was the end of Charles de Gaulle. But he demanded the return of his US dollars with gold. When he retired, then his successors continued the same policy. And in 1971, the French government turned to the United States with something like $3 billion worth of USD and demanded the gold. And Nixon caught cold feet. Nixon realized that probably the game is up. They printed all these US dollars and they didn't have the gold. And if France asks for the gold today, Kuwait might ask tomorrow, Saudi Arabia might ask the day after, and then there will be an avalanche and the whole system will collapse. So Nixon retired to a place called Camp David, and he did some introspection. And then he announced to the world, we gave our word, but we don't have to keep it. So we're no longer going to redeem dollars for gold at $35 an ounce now. So from September 1971, the US dollar was located in a place called no man's land. It can collapse. And then Henry Kissinger went to work. And as a magician, he pulled off the greatest magical stunt in human history. First of all, they got the Arabs and Israel to wage a war, but they were on both sides of the war. They had the Soviet Union in their pocket, and the war had to go to a draw. It was all public relations. But they knew that once the war started, King Faisal in Saudi Arabia will impose an oil boycott on the United States. And that's what he did. And they wanted him to do it. As soon as he imposed the oil boycott on the United States, the price of oil rose by 400%. From $3 a barrel to $12. And the US dollar collapsed from $40 an ounce of gold to $160 an ounce of gold. A collapse by 400%. And the Arabs are reaping money. Then Kissinger flew to Saudi Arabia. And he said to Faisal, may Allah have mercy on his soul. He only had peanuts in his head. Faisal said, Kissinger said to Faisal, what you're getting now is peanuts. If you listen to me, you're going to get much more than this. All that I ask of you is that you must make a commitment that you will not sell your oil. Nobody can buy your oil unless they pay with US dollars. And Faisal fell for it. And that's how the US dollar became what? petrodollar. The US dollar became a petrodollar. And then they got OPEC to come on board, all the other Arab oil-producing countries, and OPEC came on board, and there was a cartel to manage the market, which is haram in Islam. You can't do that in Islam. And as a consequence, now listen carefully, an ocean of oil underneath the river now began to function as a mountain of gold, black gold. This is the fulfillment of the prophecy. And so the petrodollar monetary system replaced the IMF system. And the petrodollar monetary system allowed the United States dollar to fly even higher. But then there were those who, like Charles de Gaulle, recognized that this is bogus and fraudulent and haram. It was communist China, who said enough is enough. And communist China launched the response to the petrodollar monetary system with an alternative to the petrodollar monetary system. And communist China then reached out to Russia after the Soviet Union collapsed. And Iran was a very important partner there in this. And that's how BRICS came into being. And BRICS today is the biggest threat of all to the monetary system based on the petrodollar. And what is happening in Ukraine is called shadowboxing. Shadowboxing. The real war is not in Ukraine. The real war is for control of the monetary system. That's where the real war is. And Trump wants to make America great again, meaning Trump wants to maintain the hegemony of the US dollar and therefore of the mountain of gold. And the war which is coming is a war for the mountain of gold. Ukraine is only shadowboxing. Now then, this is the second way in which they have sucked the wealth of mankind by imposing a bogus monetary system of paper money, which is fraudulent, which is bogus, which is haram, which is sucking the wealth of mankind. And as the value of the paper falls, there is inflation. And with inflation, my salary used to buy a camel. 1 month's salary, I could buy a camel. Guess what happened when the money fell in value? Answer: my same month's salary can't buy a camel anymore. I can only buy something the Pakistanis call a gadha. A donkey. Huh? And then after a few years, my salary, which used to buy a donkey, can't buy a donkey anymore. I can only buy a goat. And then after some time, my salary, which used to buy a goat, can't buy a goat anymore. I can only buy a chicken. And Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ. Do not deprive people of their just wage, their wealth. You are stealing from that. Professor Richard Falk from Princeton University calls it legalized theft. Here is the reason for the economic slavery which has descended upon mankind. It took a long time tonight to explain the subject to you, but I've explained it in a way they can't explain it. That's why they shut the doors of the masjid on me. But I say to them, don't worry, there's a judgment day that is coming. And on judgment day, you will have to answer to Allah for denying me the right to teach my people the knowledge